All right, good morning, everyone. This is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent. We're diving back into it after a hiatus. We're looking at an article from the Rolling Stone that topped the charts on Reddit this morning. Let's dive into it and see what we can see. Trump, who destroyed Roe, thinks he can run as an abortion moderate in 2024. I wanted to target this article today because regardless of what Rolling Stone's point is, abortion is a topic that is vulnerable to rhetorical manipulation. One of the purposes of this channel is to dive into the way people use language to manipulate the way you think about things. And to be aware of that manipulation makes you resistant to that manipulation. When it comes to abortion, much like many divisive political topics, the way that it is framed by both sides greatly shapes the way people think about it. Here's the sub-headline, and we can begin to see already the way we're looking at this. The former president is privately declaring victory over his party's extreme anti-abortion crusaders, while publicly touting his record of stripping women's rights away. So they're saying that former President Trump is publicly touting. That means they're likely going to reference some public statements that he's made. Stripping women's rights away. Who thinks here that Donald Trump got up on stage somewhere or in a press conference and said, "I'm so proud of my rights for stripping women. I'm so proud of my record for stripping women's rights away"? No, that's not at all the language that he used. They're using language to reframe the statements he's made into a negative. Happens all the time. Now, this is also interesting. Everybody loves rights. So as often as possible, the left will present things that they want to defend in the language of this is a right. The Bill of Rights, where this language comes from, refers to the rights that people have should the government that the government should not interfere with. In other words, that these rights were granted by God. The Bill of Rights is negative in the sense that it describes the things that the government can't do because they would infringe on rights granted by God. However, when you look at things like abortion, the opening line, the man who essentially ended the federal right to abortion, the federal right to abortion, while that's using the language of rights, which makes you think of the Bill of Rights, which everybody likes, except that it's a federal right, meaning that it now is implying that that right is granted to you by the federal government, which is an exact inversion of the function of the Bill of Rights, really of the function of our founding documents. So once again, we're looking at right here in the first sentence, a manipulation of the way that you think to say, oh, that bad Mr. Trump, he took away a right that we had, except that that right was created by the federal government. If you accept the framing that your rights are created by the federal government, then you have to accept the framing that if they gave you those rights, they can take them away. That is incredibly dangerous reasoning. So the man who essentially ended the federal right to abortion thinks that he can now run for president in 2024 as a moderate on the issue. Let's see what they do to substantiate that. In recent weeks, according to two people familiar with the matter, oh man, two anonymous people familiar with the matter. Wow, that's really authoritative and substantive. Donald Trump has privately remarked that several anti-abortion leaders, people who spent the last year pushing him to commit to enacting a draconian national ban, now have no leverage to force him to do anything. Okay, so besides the fact that this is basically gossip and hearsay, two people familiar with the matter reporting third hand about comments he made about some unnamed third, fourth party. This is high school gossip, but this is reported as substantive, referring to things like leverage, forcing him to do things, draconian bans, whatever. First off, I'm not actually in favor of a national ban, but that's separate and aside. Despite their very public pressure campaign for that abortion ban, the former president insist that they will all fall in line and back him soon enough, with or without specific policy promises, in large part because they have nowhere else to turn. That's not wrong. I fail to see the substance of it. That's how party politics work. You make your noises, you make your complaints, especially during primary season, but eventually, if you're part of the political party apparatus, you fall in line and push the party's agenda. That's how party politics works on both sides of the fence. Trump has also mocked certain disloyal and out-of-touch leaders in the movement for tacitly supporting Florida governor and GOP presidential candidate Ron DeSantis. He mocks people who are supporting one of his main opponents in the primary during primary season. How is this news or even unreasonable? According to the two sources and other Trump allies and aides familiar with the situation, Trump and his team are looking past the primary towards a general election fight with President Joe Biden. He's winning the primary by like 40 points. Yeah, he's strategizing for the next fight, which is the general election fight against the likely nominee, Joe Biden. Again, I don't see anything newsworthy here. They think they can somehow run the former president as a supposed moderate, as three sources put it. Okay. So this is where they're sourcing it. This language that Trump is going to be a moderate is coming from three unnamed sources, not from President Trump. I think I could be a moderate. No. They're citing anonymous sources again. I hate this in modern journalism. At least compared to the majority of the 2024 field. For months, the sources tell Rolling Stone Trump and some of his closest aides, such as the top campaign advisor Susie Wiles, have planned for the ex-president to position himself in a way that makes both Republicans and Democrats very happy. So after winning a primary, a political candidate is going to tack towards the center in an effort to capture more of the general public's affections and loyalty during a general election. How is this news? This is literally the strategy of every successful political campaign, at least for 40 years. What is the point of reporting on this other than to try and use rhetorical smear language to try and make you disrupt Trump, or to just blatantly try and get clicks because you're putting Trump's name in there and you know the people who hate Trump will read it because it reinforces their feelings about how they hate Trump. You're just clickbaiting. Like, where's the substance here? Where's the beef? Such a premise seems on its face laughable. It's a complete joke, says Pat Dennis, president of the Democratic super PAC American Bridge 21st Century. Oh, well, I don't even know who that person is. Highlighting the absurdity of the idea, Dennis points to the fact that Trump is, at this very moment, running campaign ads in Iowa, taking credit for the destruction of Roe versus Wade. So candidates target ads that appeal to specific local demographics, especially during primary season? Yeah. Again, how is this news? In the ads, Trump calls himself the most pro-life president in history, a boast that accurately characterizes the former president's anti-abortion track record, appointing Supreme Court justices who would play pivotal roles in nullifying the landmark decision, reinstating and expanding the global gag rule, and stripping Planned Parenthood of Title X funding, among other decisions. Okay. So he did some stuff that's anti-abortion. Yeah. So I'm coming to this from a personal perspective where I am also anti-abortion, or more specifically, I am pro-life. Not least of which, partly informed by religion, but partly informed by, frankly, the Declaration of Independence, that the purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That means that the right to life is enshrined in our founding documents. Therefore, it's a logical extension that the government should support life. The argument then becomes, when does life begin? Frankly speaking, it seems logically facetious to come to any other conclusion, but that life, fragile and vulnerable though it may be, begins at conception. Sometimes life ends early, for a variety of reasons. And it's almost always a tragedy. We can be sad and mad about life ending early, but there's a very different thing between life ending early due to accident, disease, death, misfortune, whatever, or the government enforcing and enshrining people choosing to end that life intentionally. Choosing to end someone's life with government funding and government support is an incredibly dangerous path to go down. Once you accept that legal framework, that the government can choose to end people's life for any justification, you have to accept that government is going to start angling to increase their ability to do that, especially if there's a way to profit from it. And by government, I mean people who are engaged in the process of government, lobbyists, etc. It is not unreasonable to be pro-life. If you want to take that position, that someone who is pro-life is extreme, then you're calling the majority of America extreme. Or at very least, based on stats, based on polls, half of America. Okay, we'll just call it roughly half. You're saying that you're reasonable and they're extreme, even though it's a 50-50 split. How do you make that logical justification? You can't. There's no rational way to make that justification. There are ways to make that justification that are emotionally driven, and that's why they use a lot of emotionally charged language in articles like this, because they want to get you upset and outraged, and they want to reinforce the way that you think about the world so that you can reinforce your own beliefs and be comforted in the idea that someone who writes well and speaks well thinks the same way as you. It's a self-reinforcing mechanism, and it's politically very useful. Okay. Back to the article. When Trump was in office and years before Roe became history, he and his White House also backed a 20-week abortion ban. His softer rhetorical approach nowadays reflects a broader pattern of Trump triangulating on some issues to appeal to more moderate-leaning voters and independents, even if his equivocations are flimsy. For instance, during the 2016 campaign, Trump began trying to brand himself as a different type of Republican who would protect widely popular entitlement programs, veering away from the conservative dogma of demanding spending cuts. If that's the conservative dogma, then the conservatives stink at politics, because that's never happened. Actual spending cuts, actual cutting of entitlement programs, which I personally am in favor of, doesn't happen. It's never happened in my lifetime in any kind of substantive way. The simple truth is the amount that government spends on transfer programs, on entitlements, on welfare, on corporate welfare, on bailouts, on the military, on you name it. From my perspective, based on my analysis, it only grows. So if there is some conservative dogma demanding spending cuts, it's completely ineffectual. So that makes me wonder, if no one's able to get that agenda done, is that really a genuine agenda? Or maybe it's a nice scare tactic. Oh no, we can't cut government spending. Look at those unreasonable people that want to demand spending cuts. We don't have a spending problem. We don't spend enough. While president, though, Trump said he was open to slashing federal entitlements, even Medicare. Towards the end of his term, some of his most senior administration officials plotted a blitz of big spending cuts to occur after a re-election, when Trump would be less politically vulnerable. Wait, politicians adjust their policy choices based on the timing of elections? I don't think I've ever seen that behavior happen on the left. Democrats never do that. It must be the unreasonable Republicans that do that. Seriously, where's the news here? Where's the substance? This is what everybody does. But the political fallout from the end of Roe has been cataclysmic for the GOP, whatever. Across the country, Republicans dramatically underperformed in both the 2022 and 2023 elections. All 7 times abortion has been directly on the ballot since Dobbs. Majorities of voters, even in conservative states like Kansas and Kentucky, have either voted against restrictions or in favor of expanded protections. So funny that that's the phrasing that they use. They're voting against restrictions and in favor of expanded protections. In other words, we're protecting not life, but the right to end life. And it's really bad if we restrict not life, but we restrict the right to end life. It's this clever inversion. They're saying as Americans voted against restrictions and in favor of expanded protections. Yeah, if you phrase it that way, most low information voters are going to go, yeah, I'm against restrictions, without really thinking about, well, what are we restricting? Well, yeah, I'm in favor of expanded protections. It's important that we protect the weak and vulnerable. Oh, no, we're protecting powerful lobbies who enrich themselves by murdering innocent babies. See how just a little bit of omission and a little bit of twisting languages can make certain things more politically effective. Trump's awareness that he would have to run against Biden with the Dobbs decision hanging around his neck has led the ex-president and his senior staff to prevaricate, especially on limits and a federal ban, in ways that infuriated anti-abortion organizers who hope to condition their support on Trump bowing to their demands. Wait, lobbyists for a particular cause want to get cooperation and support from a political candidate for their cause before they support them? What is this revolutionary controversy? That's how it works all the time. This isn't news. For more than a year, anti-abortion groups have been publicly and aggressively pressuring Trump, holding back their support, lavishing praise on his rivals. Whoa. Someone didn't support Trump and someone supported his rivals? Someone picketed Trump? Oh no! How could this be a thing? All in an effort to force the former president into a more full-throated commitment to advance their anti-abortion agenda if he returns to the Oval Office. At the very minimum, these activists want the former president to support a 15-week national ban on abortion if they help put him back in the office, in the White House. By the way, constitutionally, it is more defensible for a national ban passed by the legislative branch and signed into law by the executive branch that is more representative of the people's will than what we had before under Roe versus Wade, in which a half a dozen unelected judges created a right out of thin air, effectively legislating from the bench, in order to stop the debate at a local level and from a federal level say, this is the way it is, everyone needs to adapt to it. And there's a lot of problems with that, but they're presenting these two as equivalent. But if you look at it, if you could get a national ban passed, that is more representative of the people's will than what we had before with the judicial decision. But you won't see that kind of analysis from Rolling Stone. After all, Rolling Stone is serious journalism. A year ago, oh man, this is a long article. You know what? We're not going to do this whole article. It's just more and more of the same. And plus, I'm already running long. So here's the short version of what we're dealing with. If you read Rolling Stone, which, why would you read Rolling Stone? But if you're on Reddit and you see this come up as one of the top politics articles, and you go ahead and you give it a skim, here's what you pull from this. Orange man bad, abortion good, and Americans think that anti-abortion people are extremists. Extremists who want to operate outside the normal political process. But if you're willing to take just a few minutes and critically think about the substance of this article, what you're hearing is a political candidate is trying to manipulate the messaging around a controversial topic in order to successfully win re-election. That's not news. Everybody does that. Lobbyists who support a particular controversial issue are trying to pressure political candidates into supporting them in order for the lobby to throw their support behind that political candidate. That's not news. That's what all lobbyists do. People who are opposed to Donald Trump in the Democratic political establishment and the Republican political establishment have negative things to say about Donald Trump and think that he's being unreasonable on this point. That's not news. There's no substance here other than, hey, you know that orange man? He's bad. You should give us clicks and pay attention and read our article, and then you'll agree with us that the orange man is bad. That's my Reddit rant for today. Good luck out there.